She was never supposed to change him. He was never supposed to fall. But one rainy night in Manhattan, a woman in a simple green dress walked into his perfectly controlled life and unraveled everything he thought he knew about love, about worth, about what it means to truly see another person. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and follow this story all the way to the end. Then drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to know how far this love story travels. The rain came down in sheets that November evening, turning Manhattan into a watercolor blur of yellow cabs and streetlights. Inside Maison Laurent, one of the city's most exclusive French restaurants, warmth spilled from crystal chandeliers onto pristine white tablecloths. A string quartet played something melancholy and beautiful in the corner, filling the spaces between hushed conversations and the gentle clink of expensive silverware. At a corner table by the window, Marcus Ashford sat alone, 33 years old, worth more than most people could comprehend, and wearing a navy suit that cost more than some people's rent. His posture was impeccable. His expression was glacial. He checked his Rolex for the third time in 10 minutes, his jaw tight with barely concealed irritation. He didn't do blind dates. Ever. In his world of mergers and acquisitions, of calculated risks and guaranteed returns, there was no room for the unpredictability of romance. Love was a variable he couldn't control, so he simply removed it from the equation. But his mother, Eleanor Ashford, had been different lately. Quieter, thinner, the kind of fragile that comes when your kidneys are failing and the doctors stop talking about treatment and start talking about time. When she'd asked him, with that soft sadness in her eyes, to meet just one woman, a teacher she'd befriended at her dialysis clinic, Marcus couldn't say no. So he'd agreed. 1 hour, maybe less. He'd already planned his exit strategy, the apologetic glance at his phone, the urgent work crisis that absolutely couldn't wait. 20 minutes, he told himself. Then, he was done. At 7:14, the door opened. A woman stepped inside, shaking rain from a black umbrella. She wore a forest green dress with long sleeves, nothing designer, nothing trying too hard. Her hair, the color of honey and wheat, was pulled back in a loose, slightly messy bun. She wasn't trying to be beautiful, she just was, in that quiet, unassuming way that sneaks up on you when you're not paying attention. Her eyes found his across the room, gray-blue, like storm clouds, and when she smiled, it wasn't dazzling or practiced. It was warm, real, the kind of smile that said, "I'm here, and I'm not pretending to be anyone else." Scarlet Hayes, that's who she was, and she had no idea she was about to dismantle everything Marcus had built around his heart. He stood, pulled out her chair. "Mr. Ashford," she said softly, her voice clear and unafraid. "Marcus," he corrected. "Please, thank you for coming," she said, settling into her seat with an ease that surprised him. Most people were nervous around him. She seemed perfectly comfortable. The waiter appeared, poured water, vanished like smoke. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the window like it had something urgent to say. "I know this probably isn't your thing," Scarlett began, her eyes meeting his without flinching. "To be honest, it's not really mine either." One of Marcus's eyebrows lifted slightly. He wasn't used to honesty this early in a conversation. "Your mother," she continued, folding her hands on the table, "talks about you constantly. I feel like I know your coffee order and how you organize your desk drawer." She paused, a small smile playing at her lips. "I promise that's less creepy than it sounds." Despite himself, Marcus felt the corner of his mouth twitch. "That's unsettling." She laughed, and it was genuine, without the nervous edge most people had around him. "I work with your mother sometimes at the clinic. I'm a third-grade teacher, and I volunteer 3 nights a week. She's become important to me." He nodded slowly, studying her. Something about her openness was disarming, dangerous. "I didn't come here to impress you," Scarlett said, and her directness hit him like cold water. I didn't dress up. I didn't research your company. I don't have some master plan to sweep you off your feet." She paused, and something vulnerable flickered across her face. "I came because your mother asked me to. And honestly, I trust her judgment more than I've ever trusted a dating app or fate or any of that." Marcus stared at her. In his world, everyone wanted something. Everyone performed. Everyone had an angle. But this woman, sitting across from him, in her simple dress with reins still clinging to her hair, she wasn't performing at all. She was just present, honest, real. He glanced toward the door one last time, out of habit more than desire. Then something shifted inside him, something he couldn't quite name. He leaned back in his chair, just slightly, and made a decision he hadn't planned to make. He stayed. The waiter brought menus, took orders, disappeared again. Marcus found himself actually curious about this woman, which was a feeling so foreign he almost didn't recognize it. "So," Scarlett said, her eyes bright with genuine interest, "what exactly does a day in the life of a CEO look like? I'm genuinely curious. Is it all board meetings and power lunches, or is there more to it?" Marcus's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close. "You mean before or after I cancel meetings, restructure departments, and read 40 emails about things I already said no to 3 times. She laughed, and the sound was like light breaking through clouds. "I knew there'd be emails. There are always emails." He studied her face, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the absence of calculation in her expression. "And you?" he asked. "Teaching 3rd grade. That can't be peaceful." She grinned. "It depends on your definition of peaceful. If peaceful means 28 children debating whether Pluto is still a planet and why their best friend won't share the red crayon, then yes, very peaceful." A real laugh escaped him, surprising them both. "It's exhausting sometimes," Scarlett admitted, and her voice softened. "But I love it. Kids are honest, raw. They don't care about your job title or your bank account. They just want to feel safe and heard." As she spoke, her whole face changed. Not in a performative way, but like something deep inside her was glowing. Like she'd found her purpose, and it lived in her classroom with those 28 chaotic, beautiful children. "They trust you?" Marcus asked, and he wasn't sure why the question mattered so much. "They trust whoever shows up," she said simply, "and stays." The words hit him harder than they should have. Showed up. Stayed. 2 things he'd never been particularly good at. Not in relationships. Not in anything that required vulnerability. "Some of my students come to school hungry," Scarlett continued, her voice dropping to something more intimate, more painful. "I have one boy. Sweet kid with the biggest brown eyes, who eats half his lunch and saves the rest for his little sister. Another girl. She's brilliant with numbers, but she sleeps through math because she's up all night taking care of her mom who has MS." Marcus's fingers, which had been idly tracing the rim of his water glass, went still. "What do you do when you can't fix any of that?" Her eyes met his, and in them he saw something ancient and achingly beautiful. Compassion, without pity. Strength without hardness. "I do what I can," she said. "I make sure they feel seen. I listen. I remind them they matter, that their lives have value even when the world tells them otherwise." Her voice didn't break, but it didn't need to. The weight of her words, the depth of her caring, it was all there, pressing against his chest like a hand over his heart. "And when that's not enough?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. She smiled, sad and brave. "Then I show up again the next day." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with meaning, with recognition, with something Marcus couldn't name but felt in his bones. "You know," Scarlett said, reaching for her water, "my biggest dream isn't anything grand. No fancy title or corner office. I just want to make sure every kid in my class gets breakfast before math. That they start their day full, ready to learn, believing someone cares." That stopped him cold. Not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. No empire building. No conquest. just breakfast for hungry children. And somehow, in that moment, her small dream felt bigger and more important than anything he'd ever achieved. He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his carefully constructed world began to crack. The waiter returned, cleared plates. Scarlett had barely touched her salmon, he noticed. When the server asked if she'd like a box, she nodded gratefully. Marcus watched as she stood, crossed to the window, and did something that would replay in his mind for years to come. She unlatched the tall window, leaned out into the rain, and called softly to someone below. He turned his head. Across the street, huddled under a scaffolding tarp, was a man. Thin, weathered, knees pulled to his chest against the cold. Scarlett moved through the rain without hesitation, crouched beside him, offered the container with both hands. She didn't make a show of it, didn't call attention to her kindness. She just touched his shoulder gently, said something Marcus couldn't hear, and walked back inside. By the time she returned to the table, her hair damp and sticking to her cheeks, Marcus's entire world had shifted on its axis. She sat down, blotted her face with her napkin, and met his stare with calm eyes. She didn't explain, didn't apologize, didn't turn her compassion into a performance. And in that moment, Marcus Ashford, who had everything money could buy and nothing money couldn't, felt something he hadn't felt in over a decade. He felt moved, changed, cracked open by a woman in a green dress who saw homeless men and hungry children and somehow still believed the world was worth saving. For the third time that evening, he forgot to check his watch. He simply stayed, leaning forward, asking questions, listening to her talk about her students and her dreams, and the way sunlight looks coming through classroom windows on cold mornings. 2 hours later, when they finally stood to leave, Marcus realized he hadn't thought about work once. Not once. And that terrified him almost as much as it thrilled him. Outside, the rain had become a downpour. Marcus opened his umbrella, angled it over both of them. "Can I give you a ride home?" he asked. And his voice was careful, neutral, giving her an easy out. Scarlett hesitated, glancing down the street toward the subway. "That's kind of you, but I usually just take the train." A gust of wind sent rain sideways, soaking her shoulders. Before he could think better of it, Marcus stepped closer, sheltering her more fully. "Please," he said, and the word came out softer than he intended. "Let me." Something in his voice made her look up. Their eyes met, held, and she nodded. His driver pulled up in a sleek black car. Marcus opened the door, helped her inside, slid in beside her. The leather seats smelled like expensive cologne and old money. Scarlett gave the driver an address in Brooklyn, a neighborhood Marcus knew was far from where people like him lived. As they drove through rain-slicked streets, Scarlett turned to him. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you really come tonight?" "I know your mother asked, but you don't seem like someone who does things just because someone asks." Her perceptiveness caught him off guard. He was quiet for a long moment, watching the city blur past the window. "My mother is dying," he said finally, and the words felt like stones in his mouth. "Kidney failure. She has maybe a year, possibly less. When she asked me to come tonight, to meet you, I couldn't tell her no. I thought." He paused, jaw tight. "I thought I'd stay 20 minutes, give her peace of mind, then leave." "And now?" Scarlett asked gently. He turned to look at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes was raw, unguarded. "Now I'm trying to figure out how to ask if I can see you again without sounding like every other man you've ever met." Her breath caught. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, "You don't sound like any man I've ever met, Marcus." The car pulled up to her building, a modest brownstone with lights glowing in the windows. She reached for the door handle, then stopped, turned back to him. "Thursday," she said. "I volunteer at the community center on Thursday evenings. If you want, you could come. See what I do. No fancy restaurant, no performance. Just real life." Marcus felt his heart do something strange in his chest. "What time?" 6 o'clock. "And Marcus?" She smiled, softer this time. "Wear something you don't mind getting paint on." Then she was gone. disappearing into the rain and the warm glow of her building. And Marcus sat in his expensive car, in his expensive suit, feeling like he'd just been given something precious that he had no idea how to hold without breaking. Thursday came slower than any week in Marcus's memory. He told himself it was just curiosity, professional interest. But on Wednesday night, he found himself sorting through his closet for old jeans he hadn't worn in years, and he knew he was lying to himself. At 5:55 on Thursday evening, Marcus stood outside the Riverside Community Center, feeling more nervous than he'd felt in a decade. The building was old, brick, with colorful murals painted across the front by unsteady but enthusiastic hands. Through the windows, he could see children running, laughing, painting. He pushed open the door. The smell hit him first, tempera paint and cafeteria food, and something warm and lived in. Music played from a battered radio. Children's artwork covered every available wall surface. "Marcus!" Scarlett's voice rang out, surprised and genuinely happy. She appeared from behind a partition, wearing old jeans and a paint-splattered t-shirt, her hair in a messy ponytail. She looked more beautiful than she had in the restaurant. "You came," she said, and her smile was brilliant. "I said I would." "Most people say things," she replied, eyes crinkling. "You actually showed up." Before he could respond, a small girl appeared at Scarlett's side, maybe 6 years old, with dark skin and enormous brown eyes that held more wisdom than any child should possess. She wore a leg brace, and she studied Marcus with the intense scrutiny only children possess. "This is Amara," Scarlett said, resting her hand on the girl's shoulder. "She's one of my helpers today." "Amara, this is my friend Marcus." "You're tall," Amara announced, "and you're wearing fancy shoes." Marcus looked down at his leather loafers, suddenly embarrassed. "They're just shoes. Miss Scarlett doesn't wear fancy shoes," Amara continued with devastating childhood logic. "She wears shoes she can run in case someone needs her." The simple observation hit Marcus like a fist to the chest. Scarlett laughed, but her eyes were soft when she looked at him. "Come on," she said. "The kids are doing a mural project. We could use some height." For the next 3 hours, Marcus did things he'd never imagined doing. He helped children reach high corners of the wall. He mixed paint colors and listened to elaborate stories about superhero cats and underwater kingdoms. He learned that the color sparkle blue was apparently different from regular blue, a distinction that was very important. He sat on a floor that desperately needed refinishing and helped a boy named Jamal sketch out a dragon that breathed flowers instead of fire. And he watched Scarlett. The way she knew every child's name, their siblings' names, what they were afraid of, and what made them laugh. The way she crouched down to eye level for every conversation. The way she celebrated the smallest victories, like they were Olympic gold medals. Around 8 o'clock, as they were cleaning up, Amara approached Marcus again. "Miss Scarlett likes you," she announced with characteristic childhood bluntness. Marcus felt heat climb up his neck. "How can you tell? She smiles different when you're here. Like she's happy inside, not just outside." Then, with the wisdom of someone far older, "You should be nice to her. She's the best person I know." "I will," Marcus promised, and meant it with an intensity that surprised him. Later, as they locked up the center, Scarlett turned to him. "You did good today. I painted half a wall that will probably need to be redone." "You showed up," she corrected. "You stayed. You let Jamal talk your ear off about dragons for 40 minutes. Do you know how rare that is? How much that means?" Marcus looked at her in the streetlight, paint in her hair, exhaustion in her eyes, purpose in her smile. "Can I take you to dinner?" he asked. "Somewhere that's not trying to impress you. Just dinner. And maybe you could tell me more about those kids." Her smile could have lit up the whole block. "I'd like that." Over the next 6 weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Marcus started showing up at the community center every Thursday. Then Tuesdays too. Then sometimes on weekends. He taught a boy named Marcus to tie his shoes. He brought supplies, good supplies, the kind schools could never afford. He learned that chocolate milk could solve approximately 70% of childhood crises. He and Scarlett talked. Long conversations over cheap pizza and expensive wine, over morning coffee and midnight phone calls. She told him about her childhood, growing up in a small town in Ohio with a single mother who worked 3 jobs and still made time for bedtime stories. He told her about boarding schools and nannies, about a father who died of a heart attack at his desk when Marcus was 15, about building walls so high he'd forgotten how to climb down. "Why did you become this?" Scarlett asked him one night, sitting on her apartment roof watching the city lights. "This closed-off, controlled version of yourself?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. "Because caring hurts," he said finally. "Because I watched my mother fall apart when my father died, and I decided I'd never let myself need someone that much. Never let anyone have that kind of power over me." "And now?" she asked softly. He looked at her, and his voice was rough with emotion. "Now I'm terrified, because I think I need you, and I don't know how to do this without falling apart." Scarlett reached for his hand. "Maybe falling apart is how we put ourselves back together. Maybe being scared means we're doing something that matters." He pulled her close then, kissed her forehead, and felt years of armor crack and splinter and fall away. "I don't know how to love people," he whispered against her hair. "I'm going to mess this up." "Everyone messes up," she said simply. "The difference is whether you stay and fix it or run away. And Marcus, you're someone who stays now. I've seen it." He held her tighter, buried his face in her neck, and believed her. 2 months later, late on a Thursday night, Marcus's phone rang. His mother's number. His hands shook as he answered. "Marcus." Eleanor's voice was weak, threaded with pain. "I'm at Memorial Hospital. Room 417. Can you come?" He was there in 15 minutes, breaking every traffic law in Manhattan. He burst through her door, chest heaving, and found his mother in the hospital bed, looking so small, so fragile. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped and hummed. "Mom," he breathed, taking her hand. "I'm sorry to worry you," she said, squeezing his fingers weakly. I needed to see you. I'm here. I'm right here." He sat beside her bed, and for the first time since he was a child, he felt the burning threat of tears. "Have you been seeing Scarlett?" Eleanor asked. And even now, even like this, there was hope in her voice. "Yes," Marcus said, and he couldn't help but smile. "I see her almost every day." "Good." Eleanor's eyes drifted closed, then opened again. "She's special, that one. She sees people, really sees them, the way she sees those children." Her voice faded. "Mom, save your strength." "No, let me say this." Eleanor's grip tightened with surprising strength. "I was worried about you, Marcus. For years. You built such high walls. But Scarlett, she didn't try to climb them or tear them down. She just made you want to open the door yourself." Marcus felt his throat close. "She did. Promise me something," Eleanor whispered. "Anything. Don't let fear win. Not anymore. Let yourself love her. Let yourself be loved. Promise me you'll try." "I promise," Marcus said, and the tears he'd been holding back finally fell. "I promise, Mom." Eleanor smiled, squeezed his hand once more, and drifted into sleep. Marcus called Scarlett at 2 in the morning. She answered on the first ring. "Your mom?" she asked immediately, hearing something in his silence. "She's stable. For now. But Scarlett," his voice broke. "I can't do this alone. I don't want to." "What's the room number?" 417. "But it's the middle of the night. You don't have to." "I'm already getting dressed. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She was there in 18. Walked into that sterile hospital room in sweatpants and a jacket thrown over her pajamas, her hair uncombed and her face free of makeup, and she was the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever seen. She didn't say anything, just pulled a chair next to his, took his hand, and sat with him. They stayed like that through the night, hands clasped, her head on his shoulder, watching Eleanor breathe. As dawn broke through the hospital window, Eleanor woke, saw them sitting together, and smiled. There you both are, she whispered. My two favorite people. Scarlett stood, went to the bedside, kissed Eleanor's forehead. We're here. We're both here. You'll take care of him? Eleanor asked. And there was no manipulation in it. Just a mother's love and a mother's worry. We'll take care of each other, Scarlett said firmly. That's how this works. Eleanor's smile deepened. She looked at Marcus. Don't let this one get away. Never, Marcus promised. And he meant it with everything he had. Over the next 3 months, Eleanor's condition worsened. The treatment stopped working. The doctors started talking about comfort measures and time. Marcus watched his mother shrink, watched her light dim, and the only thing that kept him from shattering completely was Scarlett. She was there for every hospital visit, every bad news appointment, every middle-of-the-night crisis. She held Eleanor's hand when the pain was bad. She read to her when Eleanor was too tired to watch TV. She told stories about the children, made Eleanor laugh, even when laughing hurt. And she held Marcus when he fell apart in parking lots and hospital corridors, when the walls he'd spent years building finally crumbled completely, when he sobbed like a child because his mother was dying and he couldn't fix it, couldn't control it, couldn't do anything but watch and hurt. I've got you, Scarlett whispered over and over. I've got you. You're not alone. On a cold January morning, with snow falling softly outside the window, Eleanor Ashford passed away. Marcus and Scarlett were both there, one on each side of her bed, holding her hands. Her last words were simple. Thank you for the kindness. At the funeral, Marcus gave a eulogy that brought 200 people to tears. But afterward, in the cemetery with snow still falling, he stood at his mother's grave and couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand there and feel the weight of loss crushing him. Scarlett came up beside him. Tell me what you need, she said quietly. I don't know, he whispered. I don't know how to do this. Then we'll figure it out together. She took his hand, laced her fingers through his. One day at a time, one breath at a time. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus. He turned to her then, this woman, who had walked into his life and changed everything. And he said the words that had been building in his chest for months. I love you. I'm terrified, and I'm broken, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I love you. Scarlett's eyes filled with tears. I love you too. All of you. The broken parts, and the scared parts, and the parts you haven't shown me yet. They stood in the snow, holding each other, and began to heal. 6 months later, Marcus made an announcement that shocked the business world. Ashford Industries would be launching a foundation, the Eleanor Ashford Fund for Educational Equity, with an initial commitment of $50 million. The money would go to underfunded schools, to special education programs, to making sure children like Amara and Jamal and all of Scarlett's students had what they needed. The press conference was held at the newly renovated community center, which now had Marcus's money behind it. New classrooms, new equipment, new possibilities. Marcus stood at the podium in a blazer and jeans, looking more relaxed than anyone had ever seen him. Beside him stood Scarlett in a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, her hand in his. This isn't about me, Marcus told the gathered crowd of reporters and community members. This is about the people who show up every day and do the work that matters. The teachers, the volunteers, the people who see children and see possibility. He turned to Scarlett. This is about someone who taught me what it means to care, to invest in people, instead of just portfolios. Scarlett Hayes showed me that the smallest acts of kindness, a packed lunch, a listening ear, showing up when you said you would, these are the things that change the world. The crowd erupted in applause. But Marcus wasn't done. Scarlett, you told me once that your biggest dream was making sure every kid gets breakfast. That dream seems small to you, but it's the biggest, most important thing I've ever heard. And I want to spend the rest of my life helping you make it real. He pulled a small box from his pocket. The room went silent. Even the children stopped moving. I thought that blind date would be the end of something. I never imagined it would be the beginning of everything. His voice shook. Will you marry me? Scarlett stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Then she laughed. a sound of pure joy, and said, "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." The room exploded. Children rushed the stage. Amara, now 7 and walking without her brace, threw herself at both of them. Other children followed, surrounding Marcus and Scarlett in a chaos of hugs and laughter, and shouted congratulations. Marcus pulled Scarlett close, kissed her in front of everyone, and felt complete for the first time in his life. 1 year later, they were married in the garden behind the community center. No fancy venue, no society wedding, just string lights and paper lanterns, wild flowers and homemade cake. The children formed the wedding party, dressed in their finest clothes, faces shining with pride. Scarlett walked down the aisle barefoot on grass, wearing a simple cream dress. Marcus stood at the altar in a linen shirt, tears already in his eyes. When they joined hands, every wall he'd ever built was gone. There was just him and her, and a love that had grown from a single act of kindness in a rainy Manhattan night. They didn't write their vows down. Marcus simply whispered, "You didn't change me with money or logic or force. You changed me with humanity, with showing me what it means to really see people. I love you. I'll spend every day earning that love." Scarlett smiled through her tears. "You already have. Just by staying. Just by showing up. That's all I ever needed." When they kissed, Amara shouted, "We're a real family now," and the children erupted, rushing forward to embrace them both. That evening, as the sun set and the string lights glowed against the darkening sky, Marcus pulled Scarlett close. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me when I was invisible, for staying when I was difficult, for teaching me that the smallest acts of love are the ones that matter most." She kissed him softly. "Thank you for letting me in, for being brave enough to try." They stood together, surrounded by laughter and love, and the children who had brought them together. Not just a happy ending, a beginning, a family, a home built on kindness, sustained by love, made real by two people who had chosen to stay. He thought it was just one last blind date. She thought it was just a favor for a dying woman. Neither of them knew they were walking toward the love that would define their lives. The kind that starts with seeing someone, really seeing them, and choosing to stay. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show up, be present, offer kindness without expectation, because you never know when a simple gesture, a shared meal, a moment of genuine compassion might change everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, because we all need reminders that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about showing up, staying present, and seeing the beauty in other people's humanity. Love isn't something you find when you're looking. It's something that finds you when you finally stop performing and start being real.